Alright, so today I'm going to talk to you guys about the A7S Mark II and when it comes to picture profiles specifically for weddings. I looked online, did some research, watched a couple videos, and I really couldn't find that much information about picture profiles for weddings and different uses for different picture profiles. And I'll show you which ones I came up and the ones that I feel are the most beneficial for me. Because most weddings are usually outside or in a bright lit area, and then usually inside in a tent or a dark room, and trying to find one picture profile that works for me for all of them. And I just couldn't do it. It was too hard. So you got the Cine profiles, and then you got the S-Log profiles, and I stick to the Cine profiles, and I'll tell you why. The S-Log has S-Log3 has up to 17 stops of dynamic range, and in most of my videos when I'm color grading and color correcting, I don't need that many stops of dynamic range. But the problem with the S-Log profiles, especially when you're shooting in the shadows and stuff like that, and the dark, is the amount of noise that it has in its profiles. So I will give up some of the dynamic range so my footage is cleaner and less noisy. And so I'll show you, here are a couple examples of some noise in S-Log profiles, especially S-Log3 and S-Log2. So the picture profile that I use the most is Cine4, and this is great for outdoors because it favors the highlights and not as much as the shadows. And I use S-Gamut3 Cine for the gamma space, and this still gives me about 13 stops of dynamic range, so it's a pretty flat image, and I can grade it pretty heavily without the faces looking very plasticky. So this is what I use for outdoors. And when I'm indoors, I use Cine3, and this favors the shadows. It brings up the faces. So if it's very sunny outside, or you have a light coming through the window but you don't have as much light on the faces, or it's dark, it brings up the shadows a little bit, and then there's less noise going from Cine4 to Cine3 in the shadow. So when I'm doing my ceremonies, it's bright outside, I use Cine4. When it's dark and I need to bring up the bring up the shadows, and there's less noise, then I'll switch to Cine3. And so those are the two profiles that I will shoot with back and forth. And with their quick mode dials, I set one to to number 1, and then I'll set Cine3 to number 2. When it comes to the memory recall, and especially you'll notice it when you do, especially if you do high frame rate mode, where it crops in a lot and the noise is really prevalent. You can see a lot of noise. You can see a huge difference going from Cine4 to Cine3, and I love to do a lot of slow motion for like first dances and stuff like that. So that's where you can really notice the difference. And if you use almost like a S-Log2 or S-Log3, a lot of times the footage is just unusable because there's so much noise in it. Even though this camera is the king of low light, and there's all kinds of stuff like Neat Video to reduce the noise, just straight out of the camera, to me Cine3 is the best option when it comes to low light. And like I said, during the daytime, Cine4 is the best. The S-Log, it gives you a little bit more dynamic range, but I'll suffer some of that dynamic range to have less noise and a cleaner video, and all, in the end, it, helps the product look a lot better, and it helps me get the look that I want. Another thing that I do is I use a lot of LUTs in my videos. I have a couple ones that I kind of favor. So here are some examples of some footage shot in S-Log2, S-Log3, and then here are some LUTs that are put on the top of it, and it just helps the workflow a lot smoother when it comes to pushing out your final product. So I'll leave you guys with some examples of Cine3, Cine4, and then the LUTs that I've added to them.